Hey Tyler, I have some feedback for you on your Essay 2 draft. Just as a reminder, the 4 criteria that are most important for this assignment are, first, your ability to write a thesis statement that's clear, that's focused, that's debatable, and that's interesting. I'm also taking a look at your ability to support that thesis statement with details from the murals and also from a couple sources. And I saw the question that you asked at the end of your draft. The sources that I'm talking about are the documentary and Scioto Historical. I'm fine if you did a little bit of research outside that, but I do think those 2 sources are probably most relevant for this assignment. Third criteria that I'm looking at is your ability to keep your ideas organized. So you have similar ideas grouped together, but then you also have a reason why you're moving from one idea to another. Transitions help out there, but it's more important, I think, to get your ideas placed in a way that looks logical, and you make that logic evident to your reader. Finally, I'm taking a look at your ability to integrate sources to avoid Stedman's annoyances, and that's the criteria that I'm looking at. What I have here are a bunch of comments over here to the right. Those are just like quick notes to me of things to keep track of as I'm kind of giving you some feedback throughout the video. So I'll go ahead and describe my feedback or explain my feedback, and then I have a to-do list at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. I have the here, and I wrote right there. I have here because 1922, that's not when the murals were painted. It's definitely not when the flood wall was put up. The flood wall was put up after the 1937 flood. So 1922, that's just kind of a there. You might have meant 1992. So that's very simple. The word things, I highlighted that. You use it quite often. Things is a very non-descriptive word, and this is an assignment where I'm asking for some description. I think including using words like that in your day-to-day speech is absolutely fine. I use things all the time. It's not very descriptive, and for an assignment where I'm asking you to describe, and even in your just like general, like it's a good writing habit, I think, to avoid words that are not very descriptive at all. So there's always a better alternative. They represented many ideas throughout the numerous murals. I mean, and there's a number of different ways that you could revise around that. The thesis statement, I'm reading it here, is maybe this last sentence, maybe it's the sentence before, maybe it's the bottom 3 sentences. For me, the argument was a little shaky. I wasn't exactly sure where it was. It just said the idea of pride. What were they saying about pride? I think kind of condensing those last 2, maybe even 3 sentences into a single thesis statement, I think that could be very helpful for the essay. I think there's also more that you could include in the introduction to beef that up, but again, an introduction, writing that after you've drafted everything, I think that is totally fine. So there's some revision that needs to be done with the thesis statement. Okay, getting into this first body paragraph, this feels like it should be more than just one paragraph. There's a lot of detail in here, which is great. But I think that the idea of pride, and I think I was getting at this with the thesis statement, the idea of pride is just, it's kind of vague at this point. And so what are the different ways that they try to get pride across? What are the different concepts that they want us to be proud about? Like what specifically do they want us to be proud about when it comes to Branch Rickey and Roy Rogers? They show them very differently, and I think it's really interesting that you point out those differences. Like the Branch Rickey mural is very different than the Roy Rogers mural. What's the point of those differences? What do they want us to be, different ideas that they want us to be proud about? And are they different in the 2 murals? Like that, after reading your essay a couple times, it made me think about that. Their pride works in different ways, and we are asked to be proud of different aspects of Branch Rickey's life and possibly Roy Rogers. So I think that needs to get clarified. And maybe you have an argument that's kind of interesting that says, you know what, I think the Branch Rickey mural does a lot better job of conveying pride than the Roy Rogers mural. That's interesting. Or maybe you think it's reversed. Maybe you think the lack of clutter and the focus on Roy Rogers makes it a better mural. That could be kind of interesting. But that pride idea, it's just like they show pride and it's not really going anywhere more than that. There's not much depth to that thesis statement, which means that the paragraphs are doing this thing where they're just kind of summarizing all the details, and there's not really a place where there's not really anywhere for those details to go, because they're all just kind of like, yeah, there's just a lot of details here. They're kind of related to pride. There's not much discussion about how they connect to pride. But I think that having a thesis statement with a little bit more depth gives you a bit more purpose and more to talk about when it comes to those murals. So there are different ways that pride is conveyed. Let's talk about those different ways. Yeah, I kind of mentioned here, like you mentioned the difference between the two murals. I mean, you use this contrast language here, which is good. I really like that kind of transition signal right there. On the other hand, Roy Rogers, he's represented in a very different way than Branch Rickey was. And so how is that pride idea, should that work differently? What are we asked to be proud about when it comes to those two murals? I think whatever tact you take or whatever approach you take, and I'm trying to give you options here, and I think about different ways that pride is conveyed might be one way. I do think that this paragraph is getting to be a bit long, and I don't think that you should separate this into a paragraph about Roy Rogers and a paragraph about Branch Rickey. I think talking about different ideas of pride, or different ways that the murals try to get across pride, or maybe some of the visual details in the mural are leading you to believe that one mural does a better job of demonstrating pride. I think that's what I'm trying to get you to think about. But whatever you decide to do, there should be, throughout your paragraphs, there should be some discussion of detail. So like you include some detail, and then there should be discussion of that detail that connects those details to the overall thesis statement, or to the paragraph's overall point. That is a huge issue to revising this essay. So if you need to go back and listen to that a little bit, again, do that. Have to connect details to the paper's overall point, or to the paragraph's overall point. And right now, there's like a list of details, and then at the end, we get, yeah, by the way, that's pride. And sometimes we don't even get that. Like when I'm looking here, I just see kind of a list of details. Here, I think you're doing a better job with the color. That's the thing, is like this paragraph up here has a lot more detail, which is great, but there's not much discussion connecting it to the thesis statement, which means that it's not fulfilling that part of the assignment. Down here, you are doing a better job of kind of explaining how these murals are connected to pride, like you do it down here, and I think you do it here. I would say more needs to happen. You've got a little bit there as well, but you have a lot more discussion of pride in this paragraph, but you don't have nearly as much detail. So I think some balance there is needed. I think this paragraph is going to be awesome if you can kind of think through what are the different ways that they get pride across. Is there one mural that does a better job of it than the other? I think that might change the color paragraph as well, but I think it's going to be a better paper altogether when we're able to kind of think about it in those different ways. Here's a quick to-do list. You have the question here. Beyond These Walls and the Scioto Historical, those were the two sources I would recommend. And again, if you choose something else, do a little research on your own and you find something. I'm not going to be mad at that. I am going to be looking at how you integrate those sources. So whether it's Beyond These Walls or a different source, what have you, you need to make sure that it's integrated into your writing. All right, your to-do list. Condense that thesis statement. It's taken up 2 or 3 sentences of that paragraph. It needs to be condensed into one statement. Clarify that first body paragraph. There's a lot going on there. I think there's different ways to kind of split that up to make that more manageable. But whatever you do, you have to explain the details throughout the paragraph and connect them to the paper's overall point, to the paragraph's overall point. It can't just happen at the end. It has to happen throughout. So if that means that you talk about less detail and you have more explanation of the examples that you include, I'm fine with that. But that explanation needs to be there. Break the paragraph down into different ways that suggest pride. That's a suggestion that I have. There might be other ways to go about it. And I ask, are there different kinds of pride suggested in those details? So that's my feedback. Don't be shy about asking me questions. Your revision is due Monday, November the 12th. If you need a little bit more time than that, I can work with you there. But I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. And again, let me know if you have questions.